The alarm screamed inside the cockpit. Red lights flashed everywhere. Minho gripped the controls with both hands as his small scout ship shook violently. Smoke filled the cabin. He could barely see through the cracked view screen. Come on, he whispered through clenched teeth. The planet below was covered in white. Snow and ice stretched as far as he could see. His ship was falling fast. The engine made a terrible grinding sound. Then it stopped completely. Minho felt his stomach drop as the ship began to spin. He pulled hard on the controls, trying to level out. The ground rushed up to meet him. The impact threw him forward against his harness. Metal screamed and tore. The ship bounced once, twice, then slid across the frozen ground. Ice and snow sprayed everywhere. Finally, the ship stopped moving. Minho hung in his seat, breathing hard. Pain shot through his left arm and ribs. He tasted blood in his mouth. Slowly, he reached up and unbuckled his harness. He fell to the floor with a grunt. The cold hit him immediately. The ship's hull was torn open on one side. Freezing wind howled through the gap. Minho crawled toward his emergency pack. His arm screamed in protest, but he kept moving. He had to keep moving or he would die. He pulled out the thermal blanket and wrapped it around himself. Then he grabbed the medical kit and the distress beacon. His fingers were already going numb. He pressed the button on the beacon. A small green light blinked on. Good. At least that still worked. Minho knew he had to find shelter. The ship was destroyed. The heater was dead. If he stayed here, he would freeze. He pushed himself to his feet and stumbled toward the hole in the hull. Outside, the wind cut through him like knives. Snow swirled in every direction. He could barely see 10 feet ahead. Minho pulled the blanket tighter and started walking. He had no idea where he was going. He just knew he had to move. His mission had been simple. Find the missing colonists. 12 people from the settlement on Vera 7 had disappeared 3 weeks ago. No trace, no signal. Just gone. Minho and his partner Ji-young had been sent to search. They had split up to cover more ground. That was before the storm hit. Before something had damaged his ship. Now Minho was alone on a frozen planet, hurt and lost. His breath came out in white clouds. Each step was harder than the last. The cold was getting inside him. His legs felt heavy. His thoughts were getting fuzzy. He didn't know how long he walked. Minutes? Hours? Time seemed strange. The white landscape looked the same in every direction. The wind never stopped. Minho's legs finally gave out. He fell forward into the snow. He tried to get up. His arms wouldn't work right. The cold was winning. He could feel it pulling him down, making him sleepy. Part of him wanted to just close his eyes and rest. Just for a minute, no, he had to stay awake. People were counting on him. Those colonists were out here somewhere. Ji-young was waiting for his signal. He couldn't give up, but his body had other ideas. Darkness crept in from the edges of his vision. The cold didn't hurt anymore. That was bad, he knew. That meant he was dying. Minho's eyes closed. He wasn't sure how much time passed. Then he felt something warm press against him. Then another warm thing. And another. Small bodies were pushing against his sides, his back, his chest. Heat began to spread through him. Voices, high and squeaky. Not human voices. They chirped and whistled. Minho forced his eyes open a crack. Through the snow he saw faces. Small faces with big eyes and furry features. They looked like a cross between cats and bears covered in thick white fur. Cubs. 3 of them. They were piled around him, their bodies radiating heat. One of them patted his face with a small paw. It made more chirping sounds. The others joined in, their voices urgent. Minho tried to speak but only managed to croak. The cubs pressed closer, sharing their warmth. Slowly, feeling began to return to his hands and feet. With feeling came pain. But pain meant he was alive. One of the cubs grabbed his sleeve with its teeth and pulled. It was surprisingly strong. The others pushed from behind. They were trying to move him. Minho didn't have the strength to resist. He let them guide him. They led him to a rocky outcrop he hadn't seen through the snow. There was a small cave entrance barely visible. The cubs pulled and pushed him inside. The wind immediately stopped. The cave was small but dry. More importantly, it was warmer than outside. The cubs settled around him again, their warm bodies pressed against his. Minho's shivering began to slow. His mind cleared a little. He looked at the small creatures who had saved his life. They looked back at him with intelligent eyes. The smallest cub chirped at him. It raised one paw and pointed toward the back of the cave. Then it made a complicated series of sounds. The other 2 cubs joined in, their voices excited. They kept pointing deeper into the cave system. Minho didn't understand their language, but their meaning was clear. They wanted to show him something. They wanted him to follow them somewhere. One of the cubs gently tugged on his sleeve again. It looked up at him with pleading eyes. Then it said something that sounded almost like words. Minho's translator had been in his ship, but even without it he could sense the urgency in their voices. The middle-sized cub moved closer to his face. It chirped softly, then made a sound that could have been wake up. Another sound followed that might have been human. Humans. Then more chirps and whistles. The smallest cub jumped up and down excitedly. It pointed again toward the darkness at the back of the cave. It made a sound that was unmistakably triumphant, a sound that could mean only one thing. Found them. Minho's heart began to race despite his exhaustion and pain. These cubs knew something. They had found something. Or someone. Could it be? Could they have found the missing colonists? He pushed himself up on his elbows, ignoring the pain in his ribs. The cubs bounced around him, clearly excited that he understood. They wanted him to follow. They wanted to show him. But first, Minho needed to recover enough strength to move. The cubs seemed to understand this too. They settled back down around him, sharing their warmth. The smallest one rested its head on his chest and made soft, comforting sounds. As Minho lay there, surrounded by these strange alien creatures who had saved his life, he realized his mission might not be over after all. Somewhere in this frozen wasteland, the colonists were waiting, and somehow these cubs knew where they were. He just had to survive long enough to find out. Minho woke to the sound of chirping. His whole body ached, but the terrible cold had retreated to a dull chill. The three cubs were still pressed against him, their warm bodies keeping him alive. Morning light filtered through the cave entrance, painting the ice walls in shades of blue and white. He sat up slowly, testing his injuries. His left arm throbbed, but he could move it. His ribs were definitely bruised, maybe cracked, but nothing felt broken. He had been lucky. Without these cubs, he would be dead in the snow. The smallest cub noticed he was awake and immediately jumped to its feet. It chirped excitedly and bounded toward the back of the cave. The other two followed, looking back at Minho expectantly. They wanted him to come with them. Minho checked his emergency pack. The medical kit was still there, along with a few protein bars and a water purifier. The distress beacon blinked its steady green light. He wondered if Ji-young had picked up the signal yet. She would be worried. They had been partners for 3 years. She knew him well enough to know he wouldn't miss a check-in unless something was seriously wrong. The cubs were getting impatient. The middle one came back and tugged on his pant leg. Minho nodded and got to his feet. His legs were shaky but held his weight. He wrapped the thermal blanket around his shoulders and followed the small creatures deeper into the cave. The tunnel sloped downward, the walls smooth and worn by time. The cubs moved with confidence, clearly familiar with these passages. Their white fur seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, providing just enough light to see by. Minho wondered what other abilities these creatures had. After about 20 minutes of walking, the tunnel opened into a larger cavern. Minho stopped and stared. It was beautiful. Ice formations hung from the ceiling like chandeliers. Strange plants grew from cracks in the walls, glowing with soft bioluminescence. And in the center of the cavern, carved into the stone itself, were structures, buildings, a village. The cubs led him to the edge of the village, but stopped there. They made worried sounds and kept looking around nervously. Minho understood. They weren't supposed to bring him here. This was their home and he was an outsider. Adult Velkari began to emerge from the structures. They were larger than the cubs, about 4 feet tall at the shoulder, with the same thick white fur and intelligent eyes. But unlike the cubs, these adults looked wary. Some showed their teeth. Others made low warning sounds. The cubs huddled close to Minho, as if protecting him. The smallest one chirped loudly, standing between Minho and the approaching adults. It seemed to be explaining something, its paws gesturing animatedly. An older Velkari stepped forward. This one had gray mixed into its white fur and walked with authority. It spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. The cubs responded, their voices high and urgent. The conversation went back and forth, the cubs clearly arguing for Minho's presence. Finally, the elder turned to look at Minho directly. Its eyes were sharp and calculating. It made a sound, then gestured with one paw. Two younger adults came forward and took positions on either side of Minho. Not threatening, but not friendly either. Guards. The cubs made distressed sounds, but the elder spoke firmly. The smallest cub pressed against Minho's leg one last time, then reluctantly followed the other cubs away. Minho watched them go, feeling oddly abandoned despite knowing these creatures for less than a day. The guards led him through the village. Other Velkari watched from doorways and windows. Some seemed curious, others seemed angry. Minho kept his hands visible and moved slowly. He didn't want to seem threatening. They brought him to a larger structure at the far end of the village. Inside it was warm and dry. The walls were covered in markings and symbols. Some looked like writing. Others looked like maps. The elder entered behind him and gestured to a pile of furs. Minho sat down carefully. The elder studied him for a long moment. Then it moved to a panel on the wall and touched something. A holographic display flickered to life, showing images. Minho leaned forward, trying to understand. The images showed humans, a settlement being built, Velkari watching from a distance. Then machines came. Big machines that tore into the ground. The sacred grounds, Minho realized, seeing the Velkari's reactions in the images. The machines were destroying something important to them. The images showed Velkari trying to stop the machines, humans and Velkari fighting. Then the machines left, but the damage was done. The sacred grounds were ruined, and the Velkari blamed all humans. The elder turned off the display and looked at Minho. Its message was clear. This was why they didn't trust humans. This was why his presence here was problematic. Minho thought quickly. He pulled out his own small datapad from his pack. It had survived the crash. He accessed his mission files and pulled up information about the missing colonists. He showed the elder their pictures. 12 people, 3 families, gone for 3 weeks. The elder looked at the images, then looked at Minho. It made a sound that might have been understanding. Then it gestured for him to follow again. They walked through more tunnels, going deeper underground. The temperature dropped. Ice covered the walls here. Finally, they reached a massive cavern. And there, in ice caves along the walls, Minho saw them. The colonists. They were alive but imprisoned. Each one was in a separate ice cave, sealed behind barriers of frozen water. They looked cold and hungry but not badly hurt. Minho's heart raced. He had found them. The cubs had been right. But as he looked around the cavern, he realized something else. There were other prisoners here too. Velkari. Not many, maybe 5 or 6. But they were imprisoned just like the humans. That didn't make sense. Why would the Velkari imprison their own people? The elder seemed to read his confusion. It made a complicated series of sounds and gestures. Minho understood only pieces of it, but the meaning became clear. Not all Velkari agreed with keeping the humans prisoner. Some had argued for letting them go. Those Velkari had been imprisoned too. This wasn't a simple case of one species against another. This was politics. Faction against faction. Some Velkari wanted revenge for the sacred grounds. Others wanted peace, and the colonists were caught in the middle. The elder led him back to the main village. As they walked, Minho formed a plan. He needed to contact Ji-young. He needed backup. But he also needed to prove that not all humans were like the ones who had destroyed the sacred grounds. He needed to show the Velkari that cooperation was possible. Back in the room with the furs, the elder seemed to make a decision. It spoke firmly, then left. The guards remained but moved to the doorway, giving Minho some space. He was still a prisoner, but perhaps not an enemy. Not yet. The 3 cubs appeared in the doorway an hour later. They had somehow evaded the guards or been allowed through. They crowded around Minho, chirping softly. The smallest one nuzzled his hand. Minho smiled despite everything. These small creatures had saved his life and led him to the colonists. They had risked punishment from their elders to help him. If cubs could show such courage and compassion, surely there was hope for understanding between their species. He pulled out a protein bar and broke it into pieces, offering some to each cub. They sniffed it cautiously, then ate eagerly. The middle one made a happy sound. The largest one curled up against his side. Through the cave entrance, Minho could see snow still falling. Somewhere out there, Ji-young was looking for him. His beacon was still transmitting. She would find the signal. She would come. And when she did, Minho needed to be ready. Ready to negotiate. Ready to prove that humans could be trusted. Ready to free the colonists and the imprisoned Velkari. Ready to show that the destruction of the sacred grounds wasn't what all humans wanted. The cubs fell asleep around him, their breathing soft and steady. Minho stroked the smallest one's fur gently. These creatures had shown him kindness when they had no reason to. They had crossed the divide between species without hesitation. If they could do it, so could he. Humanity's strength wasn't just in technology or weapons, it was in compassion, in refusing to give up on others, in building bridges across impossible distances. Tomorrow he would find a way to make the elder understand. Tonight he would rest and heal, surrounded by unlikely friends who had already shown him that friendship could exist even in the coldest places. 3 days had passed since the cubs found Minho in the snow. His injuries were healing thanks to a pace the elder had grudgingly provided. The ribs still hurt when he breathed deeply, but he could move without gasping in pain. The cubs visited him every day, bringing him food and company. They had become his constant companions, his bridge to understanding the Velkari. On the morning of the 4th day, Minho made his decision. He couldn't wait any longer for Ji-young to find him. The colonists were suffering in those ice caves. Every day they spent imprisoned was another day they grew weaker. He had to act. The guards had grown less watchful. They saw him as a guest now, not a threat. When they changed shifts at midday, Minho slipped out of the room. The cubs had shown him the route to the prison cavern. He moved quickly through the tunnels, his heart pounding. The cavern was dimly lit by the glowing plants. 2 Velkari guards stood at the entrance. Minho paused, thinking fast. He couldn't fight them. He needed another way. The smallest cub appeared beside him, startling him. It chirped softly and gestured for him to follow. The other 2 cubs were there too, hiding in the shadows. They had followed him, or maybe they had known where he was going. The cubs moved along the wall, finding a narrow side passage Minho hadn't noticed before. It was barely wide enough for him to squeeze through, but he managed. The passage opened behind a large ice formation, out of sight of the guards. Minho approached the nearest ice cave. Inside was a woman named Heejin, one of the colonists. Her eyes widened when she saw him. She pressed her hands against the ice barrier, her mouth moving. No sound came through. The ice was too thick. He examined the barrier carefully. It wasn't natural ice. It was some kind of technology, maintained by a device embedded in the cave wall. Minho pulled out his multi-tool and started working on the device. The cubs watched nervously, their ears swiveling toward the guards. The device sparked and died. The ice barrier began to melt. But the sound of cracking ice echoed through the cavern. The guards heard it. They shouted and came running. Minho barely had time to pull Heejin out of the cave before the Velkari guards reached them. They snarled, their teeth bared. More guards appeared from other tunnels. Minho backed up, putting himself between Heejin and the angry Velkari. The cubs jumped between them, chirping urgently. They were trying to explain, trying to calm the situation, but the guards weren't listening. One of them lunged forward. A roar stopped everyone in their tracks. A larger Velkari entered the cavern, her fur marked with scars from old battles. She was massive, easily twice the size of the guards. The cubs immediately ran to her, chirping excitedly. This was their mother. Her name was Shira. Minho would later learn. She was a warrior, respected and feared throughout the Velkari clans. Her cubs had gone missing the day before the blizzard. She had been searching for them ever since. Now she had found them, safe with a human. Shira approached Minho slowly, her eyes locked on his. She looked at her cubs, then at Heejin, then back at Minho. She was evaluating him, deciding if he was a threat to her children. The smallest cub pressed against her leg and made a long, complicated series of sounds. It was telling her something. The other cubs joined in, all talking at once. Shira listened carefully, her expression unreadable. Finally, she made a decision. She spoke to the guards in a commanding voice. They hesitated but obeyed, stepping back. Then she turned to Minho and gestured. Follow. She led them back through the tunnels, not to the prison, but to a different room. Hyejin held onto Minho's arm, weak but determined. The cubs bounced around them, clearly proud of themselves. In the room, Shira brought out supplies. Food, water, blankets. She gave them to Hyejin first, watching as the woman ate hungrily. Then she turned to Minho and began to speak. Her voice was rough, her pronunciation strange, but she was using words. Human words. You save cubs? She asked. Minho shook his head. No, cubs saved me. I was dying in snow. They brought me to cave. They gave me warmth. Shira's eyes narrowed. She looked at her cubs, who nodded enthusiastically. She seemed surprised. Why? Why humans save cubs? I didn't save them, Minho repeated. They saved me. But if they were in danger, yes, I would help them. They are children. All children deserve protection. Shira was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, other humans. They destroy sacred grounds, kill Valkyrie who protect it. Why you different? Minho took a deep breath. This was his chance to explain. Those humans were criminals. They worked for a mining company. They came here illegally. The colonists didn't know about them. When the colonists found out what the company did, they tried to stop them. But the company had already left. He pulled out his datapad and showed her the files. Reports from the colonial administration. Complaints filed against the mining company. Legal actions taken. The colonists are good people. They came here to build homes, not to destroy. They respect this world. Shira studied the information carefully. She could read some of the human writing, Minho realized. She had been learning about humans preparing for possible future contact. Or preparing for war. Elders say all humans bad, Shira said slowly. Elders say must keep humans prisoner. Must make them pay for sacred grounds. The elders are wrong, Minho said firmly. Punishing innocent people doesn't fix what was broken. It only creates more anger, more pain. There has to be another way. A new voice spoke from the doorway. There is no other way. A Valkyrie entered the room. This one was different from the others. Darker fur, cold eyes. He radiated authority and danger. Behind him were 6 warriors, all armed with stone weapons. Vorgan, Shira said, her voice tight. Shira, he replied, I see you have found your cubs. And an enemy. He gestured at Minho. He is not enemy, Shira said. He helped my cubs. He is human, Vorgan said flatly. All humans are enemies. They destroyed our most sacred place. They killed our people. Now you harbor one in our village? You let him free a prisoner? Cubs saved him, Shira argued. They brought him here. That means something. It means your cubs are foolish, Vorgan snapped. Like you. I warned the council about you, Shira. I said you were too soft, too willing to forgive. Now I see I was right. He signaled his warriors. They moved forward to surround Minho and Hyejin. The cubs hissed and backed against their mother. Shira bared her teeth in warning, but she was outnumbered. You will come with us, Vorgan said to Minho. You and the female. Back to the prison. And this time you will be watched more carefully. Wait, Minho said desperately. Just listen to me. The people who destroyed your sacred grounds, they weren't these colonists. They were a corporation. A company. They broke human laws too. If you let me contact my partner, we can prove it. We can find the real criminals and make them answer for what they did. Vorgan laughed, a harsh sound. More human lies. We have heard enough lies. The council has decided. All humans will be punished. When your people come looking for you, we will be ready. We will show them what happens to those who harm the Valkyrie. He was planning an ambush, Minho realized with horror. When Ji-young came to rescue them, she would be flying into a trap. And it wouldn't just be her. She would bring backup. More humans. It would be a massacre on both sides. You can't do this, Minho said. Starting a war won't bring back what you lost. It will only destroy more lives, both human and Valkyrie. Better to die fighting than to let our enemies live in peace, Vorgan said coldly. Shira stepped forward, placing herself between Vorgan and Minho. I do not agree with this. Killing innocent humans is not justice. It is murder. Then you stand with our enemies, Vorgan said. That makes you a traitor. The tension in the room was explosive. The cubs whimpered, sensing danger. Hyejin grabbed Minho's hand, her fingers cold and trembling. The warriors' hands tightened on their weapons. Suddenly a sound echoed through the caves, a deep resonating alarm. Everyone froze. The sound meant one thing. Outsiders were approaching the village. One of Vorgan's warriors ran in, breathless. He spoke rapidly in the Velkari language. Vorgan's expression changed from anger to satisfaction. "Your people are here," he said to Minho. "Sooner than expected. Good. The ambush is prepared. Your partner will lead them right to us, and then we will see who wins this war." He signaled his warriors. They grabbed Minho and Hyejin roughly, dragging them toward the door. Shira started to follow, but Vorgan blocked her path. "You stay here," he commanded, "with your cubs. Think carefully about where your loyalty lies, Shira. Choose wrong, and you will share the human's fate." As they dragged him through the tunnels, Minho's mind raced. Jiyoung was coming. She was walking into a trap, and he had no way to warn her, no way to stop what was about to happen. The cubs' chirping faded behind him. He heard Shira's roar of frustration. Then there was only the sound of his own breathing and the warriors' footsteps as they took him back to the prison. The war between humans and Velkari was about to begin, and Minho was helpless to stop it. The ice cave was colder than before. Vorgan had placed Minho and Hyejin in the same cell, along with 2 other colonists he had released from their individual caves. 4 humans together, watched by 6 guards. He wanted them all in one place when the attack began. "How long until your partner arrives?" one of the colonists asked. His name was Daehyun, a farmer who had come to Vera 7 seeking a fresh start. "I don't know," Minho admitted. "Could be hours. Could be minutes. My beacon has been transmitting for 4 days." Hyejin hugged herself for warmth. "Will she bring weapons and army?" "Jiyoung is a scout like me. She'll probably bring a small team, maybe 4 or 5 people." He didn't mention that would make them badly outnumbered. They all knew the math. The 4th colonist, a woman named Sujin, spoke quietly. "We're going to die here, aren't we?" "No," Minho said firmly. "We're not. There has to be a way to stop this." But he didn't know what that way was. Vorgan had prepared his ambush carefully. Warriors were positioned throughout the caves, ready to attack when the rescue team arrived. Even if Minho could somehow warn Jiyoung, she would still walk into a trap. And if they tried to fight their way out, Velkari and humans would die. The fragile possibility of peace would die with them. A small sound made him turn. 3 small shapes squeezed through a crack in the ice wall that the guards hadn't noticed. The cubs. They chirped softly and rushed to Minho, pressing against him. "You shouldn't be here," Minho whispered. "If Vorgan finds you?" The smallest cub interrupted with urgent chirping. It pulled something from a pouch around its neck. A data crystal, the kind humans used to store information. Where had it gotten this? The middle cub acted out a little scene. It pretended to dig in the ground, then pretended to find something hidden. It pointed at the crystal, then made a sound that might have meant proof. Minho's hands shook as he took the crystal. Could this be what he hoped? Evidence of what really happened at the sacred grounds? He had no way to read it without equipment. But if this proved the colonists were innocent, a roar echoed through the caves. Shira appeared at the entrance to their cell. Moving so fast the guards barely had time to react. She knocked 2 of them aside and broke the control panel with one powerful swipe. The ice barrier dissolved. "Come," she commanded in her rough human speech. "Now, fast." The guards were recovering, reaching for their weapons. Shira roared again, and the sound was so fierce that even the guards hesitated. The cubs darted past her into the cell, pulling at the human's clothes. Minho grabbed Hyejin's arm. Daehyun helped Sujin to her feet. They ran. Behind them, the guards shouted alarms. More warriors would be coming. But Shira led them through passages Minho had never seen, twisting routes that seemed to double back on themselves. "She knew every inch of these caves. Why are you helping us?" Minho asked as they ran. "Cub showed me truth," Shira said. "Found crystal in ruins. Images on crystal. Not colonists who destroyed sacred grounds. Different humans. Corporation humans. You saw it? You know we're innocent." "Yes, but Vorgan does not want truth. Vorgan wants war, wants power, uses sacred grounds as excuse." They emerged into a small chamber filled with equipment.
Human equipment.
Minho recognized a portable terminal, communication devices, survey tools. This must be gear the colonists had been carrying when they were captured. Shira gestured at the terminal. "Use call partner. Tell truth." Minho rushed to the terminal and powered it up. It flickered to life, still holding a charge. He accessed the communication system and sent an emergency broadcast on Jiyoung's frequency. "Jiyoung, this is Minho. If you can hear this, do not approach the village. I repeat, do not approach. It's an ambush." The faction that captured the colonists wants to start a war. They're waiting for you. He waited. Static filled the air. Then Ji-young's voice crackled through. Minho! Thank God. We picked up your beacon 2 days ago. We're about 1 kilometer from your position. What's the situation? Bad. The Velkari who live here are divided. Some want peace. Some want revenge for the destruction of their sacred grounds. But it wasn't the colonists who destroyed anything. It was a corporation. We have proof. What kind of proof? Minho inserted the crystal into the terminal. Data began to stream across the screen. Video footage, timestamps, corporate logos, everything they needed. The crystal contained surveillance footage from the mining operation. It showed corporate mercenaries destroying Velkari structures, killing Velkari who tried to stop them, and deliberately framing it to look like the colonists' work. The footage even showed the corporate manager laughing about how the colonists would take the blame. I'm uploading it to you now, Minho said. Ji-young, this is big. The corporation knew there were intelligent natives here. They destroyed the sacred grounds on purpose to create conflict. They wanted the Velkari and the colonists to fight each other so no one would look at what they were really doing here. Mining operations, Ji-young said slowly. They must have found something valuable. Something worth killing for. Rare minerals, Shira added, pointing at the screen. Under sacred grounds. Worth much money to humans. Footsteps echoed in the tunnels. Many footsteps. Vorgan was coming with his warriors. Minho could hear his voice shouting commands. Ji-young, Vorgan is coming for us. He's the faction leader who wants war. Can you help? We're on our way. Hold tight. But Minho knew there wasn't enough time. Vorgan's warriors appeared at both tunnel entrances, trapping them in the chamber. Vorgan himself stepped forward, his eyes blazing with anger. Traitor! He spat at Shira. You betray your own people for humans. I protect my people from liars, Shira shot back. You knew truth, Vorgan. You knew colonists did not destroy sacred grounds, but you kept quiet. Why? Vorgan's expression flickered. Just for a moment, Minho saw something that looked like guilt. Then it hardened again into anger. Proof, the smallest cub chirped, pushing forward. It pulled out another crystal from its pouch. How many had these cubs found? Vorgan lunged for the cub, but Shira was faster. She put herself between them, teeth bared. You will not touch my children. The cub dropped the crystal. It rolled across the floor to Minho's feet. He picked it up and inserted it into the terminal, his heart pounding. Please let this be what he thought it was. New images appeared on the screen. These weren't from the mining site. These were from the Velkari village. Hidden camera footage, grainy but clear enough. It showed Vorgan meeting with corporate representatives in secret. Money changing hands. Agreements being made. You were working with them, Minho said, his voice filled with disbelief. The corporation paid you to stay quiet about the colonists being innocent. They paid you to keep the conflict alive. The other Velkari warriors stared at Vorgan in shock. Shira's expression was murderous. It's not what it looks like, Vorgan said quickly. I was negotiating. You were paid, Shira snarled. Paid in human currency. Paid to betray your own people. The sacred grounds were destroyed because of you. You could have stopped them. You knew they were coming. But you let it happen because they gave you money. More Velkari were arriving now, including several elders. They had heard the commotion. They crowded around the terminal watching the footage. Their expressions ranged from shock to fury. The oldest elder, the one who had first shown Minho the images of the sacred grounds' destruction, moved forward. He studied the evidence carefully. Then he turned to Vorgan with cold judgment in his eyes. You are charged with treason, the elder said in the Velkari language. Shira translated for Minho. You betrayed the clan for personal gain. You let our sacred grounds be destroyed. You imprisoned innocent people. You planned to start a war based on lies. Vorgan looked around desperately, but his own warriors had backed away from him. Even his closest supporters were staring at him with disgust. It was for the good of the clan, Vorgan insisted. The money would have helped us. The money is blood money, the elder interrupted. And you are no longer one of us. The sound of engines echoed from above. Ji-young had arrived with her team, but instead of an ambush, she found a crowd of Velkari waiting peacefully at the cave entrance. Shira had sent runners ahead to explain the situation. Ji-young entered the chamber cautiously, her weapon lowered but ready. She took in the scene, the freed colonists. Minho battered but alive, Shira standing protectively near her cubs, Vorgan surrounded by angry Velkari, and the evidence streaming across the terminal screen. "I see you've been busy," she said to Minho with a slight smile. "Just a bit," he replied. "Jiyoung, meet Shira. She saved our lives." Her cubs found the evidence that proved the colonists were innocent. Jiyoung bowed respectfully to Shira. "Thank you for protecting my partner." Shira nodded. "Your partner saved my cubs first. That is debt that must be honored." The elder approached Jiyoung. Through Shira's translation, he explained what had happened: the corporate conspiracy, Vorgan's betrayal, the misunderstanding that had nearly led to war. "We owe your people an apology," the elder said. "We imprisoned innocents. We were blind to the truth because we were blinded by grief and anger." "And we owe you an apology," Jiyoung replied. "Our species allowed corporations to operate without proper oversight. They destroyed something sacred to you. That should never have happened." The smallest cub tugged on Minho's hand. When he looked down, it pressed something else into his palm. Another crystal. This one glowed with a soft blue light differ. The sacred crystal cast blue light across the chamber, making everyone's faces glow. The elder reached out with trembling hands to take it from Minho. Tears ran down through his white fur. Other Velkari elders crowded around, their voices filled with wonder and relief. They had thought everything was lost. Now they had hope again, but Vorgan wasn't finished. In the confusion, he had been edging toward an exit tunnel. Now he made his move, shoving past 2 warriors and sprinting for freedom. His remaining supporters, 3 warriors who still believed in his cause, followed him. "Stop them," the elder commanded. But Vorgan knew the caves better than anyone except Shira. He disappeared into the darkness of the tunnels. His warriors took defensive positions at the tunnel entrance, blocking pursuit. Jiyoung raised her weapon, but Shira placed a paw on her arm. "No shooting. Tunnels unstable. Weapons with fire make collapse. Then how do we stop them?" Jiyoung asked. The cubs chirped excitedly. They knew another way. The smallest one tugged on Shira's fur, trying to explain something. Shira listened, then nodded. "Cubs know secret paths. They can get ahead of Vorgan, lead him to dead end." She looked at Minho. "You go with cubs?" "Of course," Minho said without hesitation. These cubs had saved his life. Now he would help them save their village from a traitor. "I'm coming too," Jiyoung said firmly. Shira gathered 5 of her best warriors. Together with Minho, Jiyoung, and the 3 cubs, they set off through the narrow passages. The cubs moved with confidence, their glowing fur lighting the way. They knew these tunnels from years of exploration and play. The path twisted and turned, sometimes so narrow they had to crawl. Minho's ribs ached with every movement, but he pushed through the pain. Behind them, they could hear Vorgan's group moving through the main tunnel. The cubs were taking them on a shortcut. After 10 minutes of climbing and squeezing through tight spaces, they emerged into a large cavern. It was a dead end with only one entrance. The cubs had led them perfectly. Now they just had to wait. Vorgan burst into the cavern moments later, his 3 warriors close behind. He skidded to a stop when he saw them waiting. His eyes darted around, looking for another exit. There was none. "It's over, Vorgan," Shira said. "Surrender. Face judgment with honor." "Honor?" Vorgan laughed bitterly. "What honor is there in being poor? In watching our people struggle while humans grow rich from our world? The corporation offered us a future. Money to rebuild. Technology to help us survive. Blood money," Shira spat. "Built on lies and death. Necessary sacrifices," Vorgan insisted. "The sacred grounds were already dying. The old ways were dying. I did what needed to be done to ensure our people's survival." "You did it for yourself," Minho said quietly. "I saw the corporate records on that crystal. They paid you personally. Millions of credits deposited in off-world accounts. You weren't saving your people. You were selling them out." Vorgan's face twisted with rage. "You know nothing, human. Nothing about what it's like to watch your culture fade. To see your children go hungry. To know that your entire species might disappear because you're too primitive to compete in a galaxy full of advanced races. So you decided to destroy the very thing that made your culture unique?" Jiyoung asked. "The sacred grounds were your heritage, your identity. How does destroying that help your people?" "It was a necessary price. It was murder," the smallest cub interrupted, its voice clear despite being in the Velkari language. "You killed the Guardians. I saw them. Dead in the ruins." Everyone stared at the cub. Even Shira looked shocked. You went to the sacred grounds when? Before the blizzard, the cub said quietly. We wanted to see what was destroyed. We found the Guardians' bodies. We found the crystals. We hid them before the bad humans could take them. The middle cub nodded. We knew Vorgan was lying. We couldn't read the crystals ourselves, but we knew they were important. So we kept them safe. The largest cub added, Then we found human Minho in the snow. Cubs from other villages said humans were bad, but Minho was dying and alone. We couldn't let him die. It would be wrong. Minho felt his throat tighten. These cubs had risked everything based on simple compassion. They had saved evidence that would prevent a war. They had saved him. And they were still just children. Vorgan's warriors were looking uncertain now. One of them lowered his weapon. The cubs went to the sacred grounds? They saw the Guardians dead? The Guardians were my brothers, the warrior continued. Vorgan said they died fighting colonists. But colonists have no weapons that could kill Guardians. Only corporation mercenaries have such weapons. He turned to Vorgan. You told us the colonists murdered our brothers. You said we had to avenge them. But it was the corporation humans who killed them. And you knew. You knew and you said nothing. The other two warriors were backing away from Vorgan now. The realization was spreading. Their leader had lied about everything. He had let their brothers die. He had betrayed every oath he had ever taken. Vorgan found himself alone, surrounded by people who had once followed him. His power was gone. His lies were exposed. There was nowhere left to run. I did what I had to do, he said one last time, his voice empty. History will judge me. History will forget you, Shira said coldly. But the cubs who exposed your lies, they will be remembered forever. Vorgan was taken into custody by the warriors. They would face trial under Velkari law. The elders would decide his fate. But everyone knew there was only one punishment for treason and murder. Vorgan's story was over. The group made their way back to the main village. Word had spread about what the cubs had done. Velkari lined the tunnels, watching as Shira led her children home. They chirped and whistled in celebration. The cubs had saved them from war. They had preserved their heritage. They were heroes. In the central chamber, a celebration had begun. The colonists were free, reunited with Ji Young's rescue team. Medical staff tended to their injuries. Food was being shared between Velkari and humans, a sight that would have been impossible just hours before. The elder approached Minho. On behalf of all Velkari, I apologize. We imprisoned innocents. We believed lies. We nearly started a war based on false information. This shame will take generations to erase. With respect, Minho said, I don't think you need to erase it. This mistake and how you corrected it should be remembered. Remembered as the day when two species chose truth over anger, chose peace over revenge. The elder considered this, then nodded slowly. You are wise for one so young. Perhaps that is why the cubs trusted you. The smallest cub was suddenly there, pushing between them to reach Minho. It chirped happily and climbed up his leg to sit on his shoulder. The other two cubs joined them, pressing against his sides. They have chosen you as pack friend, Shira explained. This is great honor. Cubs rarely choose outside their own species. The honor is mine, Minho said, scratching the smallest cub behind its ears. It purred, a sound like rocks tumbling in a gentle stream. Ji-young came over with Hyejin, Daehyun, and Sujin. The colonists looked tired but relieved. What happens now? Hyejin asked. Now we rebuild, the elder said through Shira's translation. Not just the sacred grounds, but the trust between our peoples. It will take time, but today has shown us it is possible. The colonial administration will want to help, Ji-young offered. We can provide resources, technology, whatever you need. And we'll make sure the corporation is held accountable for what they did. Justice is important, the elder agreed, but more important is ensuring this never happens again. We need formal agreements, laws that protect both our peoples, ways to communicate and resolve problems before they become conflicts. Over the next few hours, they talked about the future. The Velkari would receive reparations from the human government for the destruction of the sacred grounds. A joint council would be established to govern relations between the species. The cubs' crystals would be studied by both Velkari and human scientists to preserve the knowledge they contained. Most importantly, the story of what happened here would be shared with both species. The truth about the corporate conspiracy, the near war that was averted, the cubs who risked everything to save both their people and strangers from another world. As evening approached, Minho stood at the cave entrance, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. It looked different now than when he had crashed here. Less hostile, more like home. The smallest cub climbed onto his shoulder again. It had barely left his side all day. Shira approached, her larger cubs following. "They will miss you when you leave," she said. "I'll miss them too," Minho admitted. "Is it strange that I feel like I'm leaving family behind?" "Not strange. Pack bonds are not about species. They are about heart." She paused, then added, "You would be welcome to visit. The cubs would like that." "I would like that. I'd like that too." Ji-young joined them, putting a hand on Minho's good shoulder. "The transport will be here in an hour. Medical team wants to check your ribs properly." "Yeah, I know." He looked down at the cubs. "Hey, little ones. I have to go soon, but I'll come back. I promise." The smallest cub chirped sadly but nodded. It understood. The other cubs pressed closer, sharing one last moment of warmth. The transport arrived on schedule, landing in a clear area outside the caves. The colonists boarded first, eager to return to their homes and from the O.